The mockery, far above Earth, in the dark and endless sky, a silver alien ship floated quietly. Inside the ship, a group of alien girls were gathered around a glowing screen. They were tall, beautiful, and carried an aura of superiority. Their eyes shined with strange colors, their voices smooth but filled with arrogance. They were not just watching Earth, they were laughing at it. On the screen, human life appeared simple. People walking in crowded cities, children running in playgrounds, soldiers training in dusty fields. The aliens pointed at the humans and burst into laughter. "Look at them," one alien girl said, her voice dripping with mockery. "So fragile, so weak, so slow." Another alien added, "They fight with sticks and metal toys. They cannot even reach the stars properly." Their laughter echoed inside the ship like cold bells. For these alien girls, humans were nothing but a joke, a primitive species crawling on a small blue world. One alien leaned forward and said, "If only they knew how advanced we are, they would kneel and beg before us." Her words made the others laugh even louder. They had conquered planets before. They had broken armies stronger than anything Earth had. So in their eyes, humans were not even worth fighting. But deep inside the ship, a quiet signal beeped on their console. It showed a single human man walking across a forest near a small village. He looked ordinary. No armor, no weapon, just a normal man living his normal life. Yet for reasons unknown, the ship's system had marked him. A strange energy surrounded him, something the aliens could not explain. The leader of the alien girls narrowed her glowing eyes. "Interesting," she whispered. "Perhaps we should meet this human, just for fun." Her friends agreed, their laughter turning into excitement. They wanted to prove once and for all that humans were useless, but while the aliens laughed and planned, the man below on Earth had no idea. He was simply walking home through the forest, the wind brushing against the trees. His thoughts were simple. His life was simple, yet destiny was about to pull him into something far greater. The aliens prepared their small craft, a shimmering pod that could land silently. Their plan was not to harm him, not yet. They only wanted to mock him, to show him his weakness. They believed it would be a game where the human had no chance. As the ship descended closer to Earth, the alien girls spoke with cruel excitement. "Shall we test his strength?" one asked. "Or his intelligence?" Another added with a smirk. The leader raised her hand and said, "We shall test everything. His body, his mind, his heart, and when he fails, we will laugh louder than ever before." Meanwhile, the man walked on, unaware that eyes from the sky were locked on him. The forest grew quiet. Birds flew away as if they sensed something strange. The man stopped, looking around, feeling the stillness of the air. For a brief moment, he thought he was not alone. Then, a beam of soft light touched the ground near him. The alien craft shimmered into existence, its surface glowing like liquid silver. The man froze, his heart beating fast, but instead of fear, there was a strange calm in his eyes. The pod opened, and the alien girls stepped out. Their tall figures and glowing features made them look like beings from dreams or nightmares. They stood before the man, smiling with arrogance. "Human," one said, her voice echoing. "Do you know what you are?" The man stayed silent, watching them carefully. The alien girl continued. "You are weak, fragile, unworthy of the stars." Her friends laughed behind her, their voices sharp. They expected the man to tremble, to kneel, to beg, but he did not. He simply stood there, calm, steady, his eyes locked on theirs. That single act of quiet courage was enough to make the aliens pause for a second. It was small, almost invisible, but it was the beginning of something they could not understand. The leader tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Perhaps this will be more entertaining than I thought," she said. Her smile grew sharper. "Let us play a game, human. Let us see how long you can last." The man finally spoke, his voice steady and clear. "I am ready," he said simply. His words carried no fear, only quiet strength. And for the first time, the laughter of the aliens faded, if only for a moment. What started as mockery was about to turn into a challenge, and what they believed to be weakness would soon reveal something far more dangerous. The game between human and alien had begun. The encounter. The forest was quiet, yet it carried an unnatural stillness. The man stood before the tall alien girls, their silver craft glowing behind them like a doorway to another world. Their faces were beautiful, but their smiles were sharp with pride. They had come here not as friends, but as judges, certain they would find proof of human weakness. One of the aliens stepped forward, her eyes glowing blue. She circled around the man slowly, her voice filled with arrogance. "So this is the creature of Earth," she said. "Small, soft, and unarmed." The others laughed softly, their voices echoing like chimes in the air. The man did not reply. He only watched them with steady eyes, his silence unsettling them more than they expected. Most humans, they believed, would cry or beg. But this one stood still, calm like a mountain facing the storm. The leader of the alien girls raised her hand, and a strange device appeared in her palm. It projected shapes of light into the air, glowing symbols twisting and changing. She said, "Human, we will test you, for amusement, for proof, for truth." Her friends giggled, whispering to each other, eager for the game to begin. The man tilted his head slightly, then answered with only 2 words. "Go ahead," he said. The aliens froze for a brief second, surprised by his lack of fear. Then the leader smirked, hiding her own curiosity. Their first test was strength. A shimmering cube of heavy alien metal was placed before him. It looked simple, like a block of stone, but its weight was beyond human imagination. One alien girl said, "Lift it, human, or prove your weakness." The man bent down, his hands wrapping around the cold surface. His muscles strained, his breath grew heavy, but he refused to stop. The aliens waited for failure, their smiles already forming. Yet, slowly, painfully, the cube began to rise, just a little off the ground. The aliens gasped softly, not because he lifted it high, but because he tried. His determination burned stronger than his strength. When he could no longer hold it, he set it down gently, his chest rising with hard breaths. He looked at them calmly, without shame. The leader narrowed her eyes. "Not strong enough," she said, but her voice lacked the same sharpness as before. Another alien whispered, "But he did not give up." The others fell silent for a moment, then quickly laughed again to cover their unease. The second test was intelligence. One alien girl raised her hand, and the ground between them shimmered with symbols and puzzles of light. It was a complex riddle from their own world, one that took years for children of their kind to solve. They expected the man to stare in confusion, to fail instantly, but the man knelt down, studying the glowing lines with patience. His eyes followed patterns, his mind searching quietly. Minutes passed, the aliens grew impatient, yet suddenly he pressed a series of symbols together, and the riddle shifted. The puzzle's answer glowed bright, solved in a way even the aliens had not expected. And for the first time, the alien girls did not laugh. They exchanged glances, their pride shaken. "How?" one whispered. The man simply stood up, dusting his hands as if it were nothing important. The leader forced a smile, but it no longer carried the same arrogance. She said, "Very well, one more test remains." Her voice trembled slightly with the edge of something new, doubt. The final test was of the heart. The aliens projected an illusion before him, a vision of someone he loved in danger. They wanted to see if humans would break under fear and emotion. The illusion showed a child, trapped, crying for help, flames rising around her. The man's eyes widened, his body moving instantly. Though he knew it was not real, though he knew it was a trick, he still rushed forward. He shielded the illusion with his arms, shouting words of comfort, his eyes filled with fierce determination, the fire of a protector. The aliens watched in silence. They had never seen such raw emotion, such strength born from love instead of power. One alien whispered, "He knows it is false, and yet he still protects." Another muttered, Is this weakness, or is it something else? The leader stepped forward, her smile gone, replaced by quiet thought. She looked at the human man, standing strong in the middle of the fading illusion. In her heart, something strange stirred, confusion, respect, and a feeling she could not name. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than before. "Human, you are not what we thought," she said. Her friends shifted uneasily, their laughter gone, replaced with silent curiosity. The man met her gaze and answered simply, "Humans are not weak," he said. The words were quiet, yet they carried weight heavier than the alien metal cube. For the first time, the alien girls did not laugh. They only stared, wondering if their greatest mistake had been underestimating the species below. And in that silent forest, the first crack appeared in their wall of arrogance. A small crack, but one that would soon break open into something far greater. The test. The forest air was cold and heavy after the strange encounter. The alien girls no longer laughed as freely as before. Their pride still burned, but their confidence had cracked. The human man had shown more than they expected: strength, patience, and heart. But their leader was not ready to admit defeat. Her glowing eyes narrowed as she looked at the man. "Enough small games," she declared, her voice sharp again. "If you are truly different, human, then face our true test." Her friends straightened, their arrogance returning like armor. They wanted proof that this man was nothing but an exception, a flicker of luck. The leader raised her hand, and the silver craft behind them came alive. Strange machines floated out, glowing with alien energy. Each one carried a trial far beyond human limits. The first machine dropped a set of stone-like objects at the man's feet. They were rough and jagged, heavier than anything found on Earth. "Endurance," the leader said coldly. "Carry them across the field and back." The man looked at the path, long, uneven, filled with roots and rocks. Without a word, he lifted the first stone. His muscles strained, his back bent, but his steps remained steady. The aliens watched closely, waiting for his collapse. But step by step, breath by breath, the man pushed forward. Sweat dripped down his face, yet he did not stop. When he reached the end, he turned back, carrying the weight again. By the time he finished, his body shook with exhaustion. But he stood tall, chest rising and falling with pride. The aliens whispered to each other in disbelief. "He should have fallen," one said. "Why does he keep going?" another asked. The leader clenched her fists, refusing to show her surprise. She moved to the second machine, a floating sphere of shifting light. Symbol spun across its surface, more complex than anything human minds had seen. "This," she said, "is a puzzle of our people. Solve it if you can." The sphere dropped before the man, its glowing patterns twisting endlessly. Most humans would have been blinded by the sight, but the man crouched down, watching carefully. He touched the symbols slowly, as if tracing invisible threads. Minutes stretched into silence. The alien girls grew restless, expecting him to give up. Yet suddenly, the sphere shifted, its light turning calm. The puzzle was solved, its once chaotic surface now still and bright. Gasps filled the air. The alien girls stared in shock, unable to believe their eyes. "How could a primitive mind?" one whispered. The leader cut her off sharply, though her own voice trembled. "Tricks mean nothing. There is one last trial." She waved her hand, and the third machine appeared. It created an illusion in the air, flames, storms, and shadows twisting into terrifying shapes. The man saw visions of fear, beasts roaring, waves crashing, fire consuming everything. The aliens watched closely, eager to see his courage finally break. The man stood in the middle of the chaos, his fists clenched, his heart pounded, but he did not run. He faced the storm head-on, his voice steady as he muttered, "This is not real. I will not fear it." Step by step, he walked through the flames. The illusions tried harder. Shadows whispered, monsters roared, fire burned hotter, but he kept moving, slow and steady, until he walked straight out of the storm. The illusions shattered behind him like broken glass, disappearing into the night. The forest was silent again. The alien girls stared at him, no longer laughing, no longer mocking. In their eyes, confusion turned into something deeper. Respect, mixed with something they had never felt toward a human before. The leader tried to speak, but her voice faltered. You passed them all?" she whispered. Her friends looked at each other, their pride broken. They had expected weakness, but instead they had seen resilience, courage, and strength beyond measure. The human man stood quietly, his body tired, his breath heavy, but his eyes burned with a calm fire. He had not come to prove himself, but he had done it anyway. Not for glory, not for power, but simply because he refused to give up. The alien girls felt something strange in their hearts, a shift they did not understand. Their leader's smile faded into silence. Her arrogance was gone, replaced by curiosity and a dangerous thought. Perhaps humans were not prey. Perhaps humans were something more. The night deepened. The forest wrapped them in shadows. And though the tests were over, the true challenge was only beginning. The shock. The forest was still, but inside the alien girls' minds, storms were raging. They had expected an easy victory, proof that humans were fragile and weak. Yet this man had carried their burdens, solved their puzzles, and walked through their illusions. He had done what even some of their own kind might have failed to do. The alien girls stared at him in silence, their glowing eyes no longer sharp with arrogance but clouded with confusion. One of them whispered softly, almost to herself, "He should have fallen. Why didn't he fall?" The leader clenched her jaw, unwilling to accept the thought. Her pride was heavy, built on the belief that her people were superior to all others. But standing before her was a man who refused to break. Not the strongest, not the smartest, but something else entirely, something unmeasurable. The human's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Sweat glistened on his skin, his hands trembling from the strain of the trials. And yet, when he looked at them, there was no fear, no defeat, only calm determination, like a steady flame that would not die. One alien girl stepped forward, her voice softer than before. Why do you keep fighting?" she asked, her tone carrying genuine curiosity. The man looked at her for a moment, then answered simply, "Because giving up means you are already lost." The words were plain, almost too simple. But to the aliens, they struck harder than any weapon. They came from a place they could not understand. For their kind fought for victory, for conquest, for pride, but this man fought because he believed in something beyond himself. Another alien girl frowned, her arrogance melting into something else, something she did not want to name. She whispered, "He is different." The others nodded slightly, though none dared to say it aloud. They were beginning to feel something dangerous, something forbidden, respect for a human. The leader tried to hold her ground, her voice sharp. "Do not be fooled by tricks. He is still weaker than us." But her words lacked their old power. Even she could feel the truth pressing against her pride. The man said nothing more. He only stood tall despite his pain, and that silence was heavier than any argument. The aliens shifted uncomfortably, their laughter long forgotten. Inside them grew a feeling they did not want to admit. Doubt. Suddenly one alien girl asked a question none of them expected. Her voice trembled as she looked at the man. "If humans are not weak, then what else are they?" The leader shot her a glare, but the question hung in the air like thunder. The man did not answer with words this time. Instead, he knelt down, picked up a broken branch from the ground. He carved a simple mark into the dirt, 2 lines crossing each other. The aliens watched with puzzled eyes. "What is that?" one asked. The man looked at the mark and said softly, "It means we endure. No matter what breaks us, we rise again." The aliens fell silent, for in that simple gesture they saw something deeper. Humans did not conquer with power, nor rule with pride. They survived, they adapted, they endured, and endurance, they realized, could be stronger than strength. It was a weapon they did not have, a force they did not understand, a force that might one day rival their own. The leader's heart twisted with unease. For the first time, she wondered if her people were wrong. Her glowing eyes softened for just a moment as she looked at the man, but quickly she hardened again, refusing to let weakness show. "Enough," she snapped, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound firm. "We came to laugh, not to admire. We will leave." She turned sharply, motioning to her sisters, but none of them moved, their eyes still fixed on the man. Something unspoken bound them there, a pull stronger than pride. The man had planted a seed in their minds, and though they tried to resist, they could not ignore it. The aliens were shocked, not only by the human strength but by their own reactions. They had begun this night mocking his kind, but now, deep inside, they felt the first spark of something far more dangerous. A strange attraction, a curious respect, and a silent fear. The forest wind blew gently, carrying the scent of earth and leaves. The man stood in its center like a figure carved from stone, unbroken, unafraid, and unknowingly changing the hearts of those who once despised him. What began as laughter was turning into silence, and that silence was louder, sharper, and heavier than any insult they had spoken before. The shock was no longer only theirs. It was the beginning of something greater, a change neither the man nor the aliens could yet understand. But one thing was certain. Nothing between humans and their kind would ever be the same again. The turning point. The night stretched long, the forest lit faintly by the silver glow of the alien craft. The human man stood steady, his body weary but his spirit unbroken. Around him, the alien girls shifted uneasily, their arrogance shaken. They had come to laugh, to mock, to prove his weakness, but instead, they found themselves staring at him in silence. One alien girl, her eyes bright like violet fire, spoke first. Her voice was softer than before, uncertain. "Human, you should not be standing, yet here you are." Her sisters glanced at her, surprised by the tone in her voice. It was not mockery, not insult, but something closer to admiration. The man said nothing. He only met her gaze with the same quiet calm he had shown since the beginning. That silence was heavier than any words. It pressed into their minds, refusing to be ignored. Another alien stepped closer, her smirk gone, replaced by curiosity. "Why fight so hard for nothing?" she asked. The man finally answered, his words simple but sharp. "It is never for nothing. Every step matters. Every choice matters." The aliens froze at his answer, for their kind measured life in victories, in power, in dominance. But this human measured life in effort, in endurance, in meaning. It was a thought they had never considered. The leader frowned, trying to hide her growing unease. She stepped forward, her voice firm. "Enough of this. He is still weaker than us. Do not let his words cloud your judgment." Yet even as she spoke, she could feel her own certainty slipping. The way her sisters looked at the man was changing, not with disdain, but with something dangerously close to respect. One alien girl tilted her head, studying him as though he were a puzzle. "Perhaps weakness is not what we believed," she murmured. Another added, almost defiantly, "Perhaps weakness and strength are not so different." The leader shot them a sharp glare, but their words could not be erased. The man had carved them into the air simply by standing unbroken, and now those words would not leave their minds. The human shifted slightly, wincing from the trials he had endured. The aliens saw his pain, his trembling hands, his tired breath, and yet he did not fall. That sight stirred something inside them, a feeling they did not want to admit but could no longer deny. It began as curiosity. It grew into respect, and now, deep in their hearts, it was becoming something more, something they had never expected to feel for a human. The violet-eyed alien stepped closer again, her voice almost a whisper. "You are different from what we thought." The man simply replied, "All humans are. You just never looked close enough." The words struck like a blade, for in that moment, the aliens realized their laughter had always come from ignorance. They had mocked what they did not understand, and now, faced with truth, their arrogance seemed smaller than ever. The leader turned away, her pride fighting against the storm inside her. She wanted to leave, to end this, to forget the man who had broken their certainty. But her sisters did not move. They were drawn closer to him, their eyes filled with questions, with wonder, with something unspoken. One of them smiled faintly, an unfamiliar smile that lacked mockery. Another's hand brushed her chest as if steadying a racing heart. They were changing, and though they tried to resist it, the turning point had already come. The forest wind carried the sound of rustling leaves. The man looked up briefly at the stars. He did not know what the aliens were feeling. He only knew that he had endured, that he had proven himself in his own quiet way, but the aliens knew. They felt the shift deep inside them. They had come here certain of their superiority. Now they stood uncertain, shaken, and strangely drawn to the very human they once mocked. The leader finally turned back, her voice lower, her arrogance cracked. "This changes nothing," she said, though even she did not believe her own words. Her sisters exchanged silent glances, each one knowing the truth. Everything had already changed. The night pressed closer, the air heavy with silence, and in that silence the bond between human and alien grew, not of conquest, not of mockery, but of something far more dangerous: connection. It was the turning point, the moment when laughter became respect, and respect began to transform into something none of them had ever imagined. The human had not just proven them wrong, he had begun to change their hearts, and from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. Lentz was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, filled with thoughts the alien girls could not escape. They had mocked the human, tested him, tried to break him. And yet, he stood tall still, tired, scarred, but unbroken. Each of them felt something they could not name. Respect mixed with curiosity, curiosity tangled with admiration. Their hearts whispered one thing while their pride screamed another. And in that storm, they knew a choice was waiting for them. The leader stood apart from the others, her glowing eyes fixed on the man. Her pride wanted to end this, to declare victory and leave. But deep inside, a different voice spoke. Quiet, stubborn, unrelenting. It told her that this human had shown them something their kind had forgotten. One of the younger aliens finally broke the silence. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Sister, what if we were wrong about them?" The others shifted, uncomfortable, but none denied the thought. Another added, "He is not like us, and yet he is stronger than we imagined." Her words carried no insult this time, only wonder. The leader clenched her fists, torn between pride and truth. Her people had always believed weakness was failure, but this man had turned weakness into strength, pain into power, and silence into defiance. The human looked at them calmly, saying nothing, his eyes steady, his body still. He knew they were fighting a battle not with him, but with themselves. The violet-eyed alien stepped closer, her voice soft, her question direct. "Human, if we had crushed you tonight, what would you have done?" The man met her gaze and answered without hesitation. "I would have stood again. Even in defeat, I would rise again." The words pierced through them like lightning, for in that moment they understood the truth. Humans were not strong because they never fell. Humans were strong because they always rose. The leader felt her chest tighten with emotions she did not want. She turned away sharply, her voice cold though unsteady. "This changes nothing. He is still human, still beneath us." But her words fell flat. Her sisters no longer looked at the man with scorn. They looked at him with something dangerous, respect, desire, and longing for something more. The younger alien shook her head. "No, sister. It changes everything." The leader's eyes widened, her pride burning. She could not allow her people to fall for a human, and yet she could no longer deny the truth herself. The man finally spoke, his voice steady but low. "You must decide," he said. His words were not a command, not a challenge, only a truth, plain and simple. "You can hold on to pride, or you can learn what strength truly means." The aliens froze. He had placed the choice before them, and though they were the conquerors, it felt as if he were the one in control. The violet-eyed alien lowered her head slightly. I want to know, she whispered. Her sisters glanced at her, but one by one they felt the same pull. They wanted to know this human, to understand him, to learn why he would not bend, why he would not break. The leader's pride screamed to stop them, but her heart whispered otherwise, and that whisper was growing louder. She stared at the man, seeing not weakness but a strength she could never crush, and for the first time she wondered if pride was the real weakness. The choice hung in the air like a blade. They could turn away, return to their ship, and forget this night, or they could take the dangerous path, the one that would change them forever. A path that tied their fates to a single human man. The forest wind blew through the trees, carrying the weight of silence. The man waited patiently, saying nothing more. The aliens looked at each other, their eyes full of conflict. They were conquerors, yet tonight they felt conquered, not by force, but by truth. Finally, the violet-eyed alien spoke again. Her voice carried both fear and courage. "Sister, I choose to stay." Her words cut through the silence. The others gasped softly, their hearts racing. And in that moment, they knew the path had already been chosen, for one choice would lead to another, and soon none of them would leave unchanged. The human man had not only proven them wrong, he had given them a new truth, and now they had to decide whether to embrace it or to run from it forever. The revelation, the night air grew colder, but the fire burning inside the alien girls only grew stronger. They had begun this night with laughter, certain of their superiority. But now, as they stood before the human man, their hearts were no longer sure. The violet-eyed alien had already spoken her choice. "I choose to stay," she had whispered. Her words echoed in the silence of the forest, and with them, everything changed. The leader's jaw tightened, her pride fighting against the truth. Her voice shook with anger as she snapped, "You cannot mean this. He is a human. Nothing more." But even as she spoke, her eyes betrayed her. They flickered with doubt, with conflict, with a strange and dangerous pull toward the man. The other aliens shifted uneasily. One by one, their glowing eyes turned toward him. They remembered his strength, his calm, his refusal to surrender, and the more they remembered, the harder it became to see him as weak. The man stood quietly, saying nothing. He did not argue, he did not beg, he simply waited, letting them wrestle with their own hearts. That silence was his greatest weapon, and it was breaking them more than any battle could have won. Alien girl finally spoke, her voice low but firm. "If weakness means rising again after every fall, then perhaps humans are stronger than we are." Her words struck the others like thunder, for in their pride they had never dared to think such a thing. Another added, almost fearfully, "If he can endure what we gave him, what else could his kind endure?" Her sisters looked at her, then at the man, and a quiet realization spread among them. This one human was not just different. He was a window into the strength of an entire species. The leader turned sharply, her pride cracking like glass. "No!" she shouted, but her voice no longer carried the same weight. She looked at the man and demanded, "Why? Why do you not fear us? Why do you not bow?" The man finally answered, his voice calm and steady. "Because humans do not bow to arrogance," he said. "We bend, we break, but we rise. That is what makes us human." The words were simple, but they struck deeper than any blade. The aliens felt their hearts tremble, their certainty collapse. What they had once called weakness now looked like a strength their kind could never match. The violet-eyed alien stepped closer, her eyes shining not with pride, but with something new. She whispered, almost to herself, "Perhaps this is why we cannot stop looking at him." Her sisters stared at her, but in their silence they knew it was true. What had begun as mockery had turned into respect, and that respect was now becoming something far more dangerous: desire. The leader lowered her head, her pride finally breaking. When she looked up again, her eyes no longer burned with arrogance. Instead, they carried something heavier, something more honest. She said slowly, Perhaps we were wrong about humans." The words hung in the air. The man gave no victory cry, no gloating smile. He only nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the truth they had finally seen. The forest grew quiet, the stars above shining like silent witnesses. The aliens stood together, their hearts filled with emotions they had never known. Respect for a species they once mocked, and a strange, undeniable pull toward the man who had shown them the truth. The violet-eyed alien spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "This is not the end," she said. "This is the beginning. You have shown us what humans are. And now, we cannot ignore it." Her sisters nodded, some reluctantly, some with open acceptance. They knew their world had changed tonight. They could no longer laugh at Earth, for now they saw humanity as something they could not defeat. Not with strength, not with pride, not with arrogance. The leader finally turned to the man one last time. Her voice carried no mockery, only quiet respect. "You have given us something we did not expect, human," she said. "You have given us the truth." The man said nothing, only looked at them with the same calm eyes, and in those eyes, the aliens saw the future. A future where humans would rise. A future where laughter would turn into awe. A future where the galaxy would never see humans as weak again. The forest wind whispered through the trees. The alien craft shimmered softly, ready to leave. But none of the girls stepped inside, for though the night was ending, their journey with humanity had just begun. What started as laughter ended as revelation. And the revelation was this: humans were not weak. Humans were unbreakable, and one day the universe itself would have to bow to that truth. The end. Enjoyed the story? Like it and subscribe for more.